Hello everyone, this is James from Bearded Swan, and today we've got a bit of a restoration job. My uncle's got a belt buckle that he's made back in 1960 or 1970s, and it's a bit worn and has not too much cracking. It's mainly just stress marks, some wrinkling and stuff here and there, and also some discoloration. I'm not sure how much of that I'll be able to take out and stuff. But we got some painting to do. We got to add some neat's foot oil to bring back the purities and stuff for the leather, and saddle soap so we could clean it and get it back to tip-top shape. And then I have to take out the stitching and stuff, and because this is pretty much fraying, and the leather and stuff, it's still strong in some parts, but in other parts it's just going to break apart. What we're going to be doing is taking out the lace first, getting the leather separated, and seeing what condition the metal buckle and stuff is in, because I could already see rust and some discoloring in itself. So I'm most likely going to be taking my Dremel tool and with some wire bristles and to get rid of that, and just to polish it up and clean it up and make it nice and shiny, because the leather itself is starting to get that discolor from the metal, and that's coming off. The top side's a thicker leather, it seems. The bottom side's a bit thinner. As you can tell, it's been stretched over the years and stuff, just being used and whatnot. So and as you can see, it's got some old just dust and everything. So what we're going to be doing is taking a toothbrush, or brushes in general, just to get all that off before we start before we start to actually clean it with some soluble. And we're going to be using a bit of that neat's foot oil, because the leather is still good, still in great condition. It's just a little dry and it needs some TLC. So let's see what the other side looks like. I'm going to be a little careful. I don't want to bend or mess this up any more than it already is. Yeah, there's some rust and everything built up. Once that gets polished and put my Dremel tool to work, I could put a bit of a finish, a coating. Not sure if I got spray paint. Actually, I do. I got some Rust-Oleum and stuff that I could spray paint it with, especially the insides at least. That way it'll protect it from any rust or corrosion that might build up over time again. My uncle ended up hand making this and stuff back in the day. He's got a number 1 on it, and some simple tooling on the outside, especially on the inside. He did the double coloring, but it's not really coloring. All he did was use a Fibings Resolene on this just to keep that a lighter color, and then when he would put a dye on it, this would stay a lighter color than everything else. So hopefully after even cleaning it up, it'll bring that luster and shine back as well. I'm going to carefully take this thing out. What's nice though about restoring something like this is that the holes are already there, and it's pretty much like drawing or coloring inside the lines. Everything's already there, it's already set up. You're just pretty much taking it apart, refurbishing it up, and making it look a lot better and stuff. And that's a bit grungy. This is just lint. And that would happen just because this was the inside of the buckle, and so this would just be catching a lot of dust and lint from the pants or whatever over time. And there's some cracking. It's gonna take a while. This isn't gonna be a one-day thing. This is probably gonna be a couple days. Definitely a couple days, because you want the oil to saturate into the leather to get it plump and get it revitalized after cleaning it. I'm gonna go ahead and just brush this stuff off and just take my time with it, because you want to get every little crack and and you could hear. And that's basically the metal coming off, where it's got this kind of finish to it. It's not shiny anymore. You can see some spots it has still got that shine, but that's what's basically coming off and discoloring this, just making it a little bit more hard and crusty. And another thing, after finishing up doing this, you always got to keep your hands clean, because if you don't, then it's just reintroducing it, and then you're pretty much kind of wasting time. When you want something to last, you're going to definitely want it to, the neighbor doggy. The neighbor dog just popped in and say hi. That's what you do when you live up in the mountains. You see some neighbor doggies. Hey, little poochie. Yeah, it's a nice sized pit bull. She's a friendly one though. I'll be back. One moment. Hey girl. Alright, I'm back. Yeah, sometimes the neighbors up here in the mountains, so I'm back, and I got a more thicker bristle, and it's like a coarse horsehair in a way, but it's not too rough. It's still very pliable, malleable, soft in a way. It's got a little bit of the lighter color, tougher fiber, but the black fibers in between are nice and soft, so it's a nice blend. Real smooth. And if this was even more cracked and more, so if it was actually falling apart, you do not want to do this to it, just because it's going to break up the leather, and that's why I was iffy on doing it on this. It's still intact, it's not weak. So I could get inside, and I do have some small brushes which will be nice. This is all on the top surface, basically. Yeah, you can see a lot of this is just gunk. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and get some saddle soap out get a clean part of a rag. And I got some water here, so we're going to go ahead and soak this up and start scrubbing into it. And for me, what I like to do, I just like to take my finger, wrap around the cloth, rag, shirt, what have you. Have a smooth surface. Any bumps and stuff are going to create friction points, and that's not really what you want. Good enough on there. Not pressing too hard. And then just go to work. Even the gunk marks, they've left pit marks on here, and that came from the top surface of this, which has the gunk that came off of this, which imprinted onto the leather. So in a way, it actually gives it a nice textured look, and you only get that with age. I mean, you can get away with doing it with new leather, but you gotta have some kind of mold and stuff that will actually press onto it to give you that texture, but that comes with age. And that's what makes leather a bit more expensive, especially old stuff that you can refurbish, because you cannot get this anywhere else in the world. It's a one of a kind, a one-off, just because of all of this kind of detail. And that's what leather crafters, people who enjoy leather, really can appreciate. But you're not going to be able to see this because it's going to be over that. However, you are seeing it here firsthand. And whenever I'm doing any project, I like to spend my time just to admire it, because at the end of the day, when I end up shipping out something to a customer, I'm never going to be able to see it again, and I'll only have those memories. And for me, that means a lot, because I remember every single piece that I've ever done for anything and anyone, even if it's a duplicate of some kind of wallet or tankard or a roll pouch. Okay, now I got my bristle ready that I want to use, and it's something that'll get into the corners and just everywhere in between. And then I have larger brushes to get a wider area and range and stuff just everywhere all around. And you got to be careful with these, just because they'll start to actually dig into the metal, because it's basically grinding, so you really want to be light with it. And for something like this that's going to be putting out dust, and sometimes these little bristles will come out and fly in your face. Always make sure that you got a pair of goggles or glasses nearby that cover your eyes and everything, because you don't want this sticking in your eyeball. Always have precaution and make sure you do things right. It's always about practicality, so I'm going to turn this on and speed up the time. You basically want to go over with your thumb and just see any rough spots, and this is actually really smooth, and you could tell by the sheen and stuff. I was able to get all the rust and all the gunk off of it, and when I spray paint it with some Rust-Oleum, I think I got some chrome, but I know I got some gold, so either way it's going to look have some flash to it again. But this is real nice of a patina in itself. You do want to protect and over it regardless, and anything just to help this metal stay the way it is without any rust and stuff building up and whatnot, what have you. And I was able to get all the gunk off. The only hard in between places is inside of this thing here, but even then I was able to get up underneath the cracks, so yeah, it's a good job. Making sure everything else is fine, and that's good to go. One thing that you do want to do for any kind of mechanism is use WD-40, and that's just going to help protect especially the inside, but also making sure that everything just moves smoothly, because this thing has a bit of a squeak and it stops right there sometimes. And so just want to make sure you spray inside and work it all the way around. This stuff is still a bit wet and stuff, but you can see how more lighter it's become. So it's starting to dry, which is nice, and it's already looking a lot better, which is great. And I was able to get all of that mold, but the one thing that kills mold is going to be vinegar. Vinegar mixed with a little bit of water, and I think it's a 2-to-1 ratio of water to vinegar. So 2 parts water, 1 part vinegar. To put on any mold or fungus growing on any kind of leather, rub it in there with a moist towel or moist cloth or a sponge, and then let it off to the side, let it dry and do its thing. And then when you get back to it, then you could add some saddle soap to work it in, or a conditioner if it doesn't need to be cleaned up, or just cleaned in general, but also adding those nutrients back in. then letting it dry some more. Then when we come back, we're going to be doing neat's foot oil, and we're going to be liberal with it because it's going to be something that we need to penetrate into the leather. It's going to need a good 24 hours just to sit, dry, and properly take in all those oils and nutrients back into the leather. And like I said, it's a process for sure. So since we ended up getting everything ready and set for the lacing, the double loop lace, I want to go over that one thing I didn't show, which was prepping the hardware. And by hardware, I mean anything and everything metal that has to deal with leather, buckles, snaps like this, or rivets, is going to be called hardware. Just to let you know, keep that in mind. But the metal plate and also the metal piece with the hook, I ended up just using a spray enamel. I primed it first, and then I used a white spray enamel to finish it up. And you'll see that when I'm sandwiching it between the leather. And two tips to keep in mind that are very important, because I'm going to use this as an example. A checkbook that I ended up making my pops over a decade ago. And my first attempt at doing my own artwork and all that stuff, and even the buck stitching, which you could tell is very noobish, because even ending it, I didn't hide the lacing too well. But the two tips though is basically making sure that you have the front plate of your belt buckle, the leather belt buckle, facing the correct direction and side, because on the back, the metal hardware that has the hook that allows you to hook it through the holes in the belt, you want that to be facing the direction that you or your customer wants. And so if you're right-handed and you pull the belt with your right hand, but you have the buckle coming over from the left side, or from the right side to your left side, then you want the hook to be facing to your left. And for the exact opposite, if you like the belt coming in from the left to the right, you want the hook to be on your right side. And if you have any artwork, what I mean by direction, you want the piece to be facing how you want it to appear to others, and that way you could correspond the metal back plating with the hook the way you want it to set up. The second tip is going to be for double loop lacing. It's going to look a tad bit like this, but it's more of a French braid, so there's more action, there's more loops, there's more detail than the single loop buck stitch. And that's basically what you got to keep in mind is the fancy smoothed outside is going to be on the front plate, and on the back side of a double loop lace, it's going to be a bit of a protrusion, and it's going to look like a border. And throughout the process, throughout the video of me lacing up everything, you're going to end up seeing and witnessing what I'm talking about. And at the very end, I'm going to show it off a bit more. But when you first start out your stitch, this is very important, because with this thing, this as well, I ended up probably going through halfway of this and messed up a few lines, and I had to take out every single one of these laces just to go right back to the beginning and start it over. So you don't ever want to do that. And the tip is basically you got to leave that 3/4 inch out and protruding on the front side of your front plate. And so when you put the needle in and you have all the excess stitch, that tab sticking out is going to be your front plate, and then everything excess is going to be your back plate. That way all the pretty lacing and everything is going to be on your front side, and the protruding side is going to be on the back. But at the end of the video, I'll talk into more detail about why I chose to do what I did. because I did it the opposite, to where the protruding side is on the front plate and it looks more like a border, and the back side is the more smooth, sort of pretty looking side. And I'll show why at the very end of why I ended up choosing to do that. But for now, those are basically the need to know tips before you start doing this kind of lacing, because like I said, you don't want to go halfway through and then notice what you're doing is wrong. And so let's go ahead and get at it. It's basically, you start off with your needle and you got to make sure that you're got the stitch right side up, the lace, meaning you want the smooth side to ultimately be on the top. And so when you first have your needle go through the first hole, you want to always have the rough side facing upwards, because when you do that, then when you loop back around, you're going to have the smooth side always facing upward. So you first start out with the first hole, going all the way through and leaving yourself about maybe, it says a 3/4 of an inch tab to leave out. That way when you first put the needle through, you have the tab sticking out, and you go and find the second hole to stitch through, and then you pull the tab over the first loop. And when you end up coming through and tightening that first stitch, it's going to create an X. And so you'll create that X and go through the bottom part of that X and straight up through and loop around to the next stitch hole. And then when you come back around, you'll find that X point again and go up through it again. And I'll show you right here. And it's a little bit tedious because you have to always have the right side facing up. And if you don't do this a lot of the time, then your lace will just get twisted up. And then at the end of every single stitch, you're fighting yourself and the lace, trying to get it right side up. And so it's good just to keep your thumb going through it and stuff to where you understand where you're going. As you can see, the X is going to be these 2 points right here. And so you're going to find the bottom part of that X, and you're going to go straight up through them. And this is another reason why you don't want this too tight, because then it gets a little bit hard for the needle to come through. So just making some room and just kind of easing it through, because like I said, these 2 prongs and the needles that are inside of the lace has a tendency to rip and tear. And so you just want to take your time, because this gets a little tedious after a little bit. And just holding my thumb and my index finger on this to keep the lace from twisting up and binding helps, keeping the lace straight and flat. And you'll always have these twisting up anyways towards the end, which I'll show right here. You can see how it's kind of twisted up. And so you just want to twist it around, and it'll find its way to where it's going to sit up real nice. And so this is where it creates that next X. But we're going to go ahead and go. This is where this is going to create that next X right here, was when we overlap this into the next stitching hole. And that's what I mean by it's going to be a little bit more better and easier once you get the hang of it, because it's just gets repetitive. You go under the bite, or under the X, and then into the next stitching hole, under the X, into the next stitching hole. And with this leather, the top front plate is pretty much bent and curled over the back plate, and so it's kind of awkward, especially when doing this kind of stuff, because this is a project that I'm refurbishing for a family member, and he ended up doing this when he was 18 back in the 60s. So, and this is where it's going to be a bit of an issue, because the leather sticking out is creating drag. So I'm just going to be taking the lace out and repositioning it. And there you see the braid is starting to come together real nice. And since we get, this is what I mean by it being competitive, you just want to find the bite, the cross and the X, and continue on. Because after this, we're going to go through the next stitch hole. One thing I'm always curious about is who actually came up with a lot of these stitching ideas, because just thinking about it, it's like someone must have been real bored. Or just had a lot of lace left over or something, I don't know. And this is going to curl and just give it a little tug and that'll be fine. The last part is a bit tricky to do, so I'm going to take my time and try to walk through with everyone. So to tie off the lacing, pull the end of the beginning lace free of stitches. Then from the back side, pull the end of the lace out of the hole. From the front side, you want to then pull the end of the lace out of the loop. Push a tool or a needle down between the leather and hook it over the lace. Pull the end of the lace out of the hole up between the leathers. 2 empty holes should appear on the front side and 1 on the opposite back side. Then you want to cut off the end of the lace you have pulled out and tuck the end of that lace between the leathers. And then lace through to the next hole with the remaining needle and everything that you have. Then pull the stitch tight and lace up through the loop from the back side. All holes on the back side should then be filled up. And then lace under the bite and don't pull this stitch tight. Carefully cross over as I'm doing and push the needle down through the loop and pull the needle through. And you want to kind of jiggle and mess with the laced edges together to adjust the starting loops for it to close up and for it to be easier completion. And then pull any slack out of the first loop and adjust the lacing with your fingers to make all your stitches appear equal. Then pull the edge of the lacing down tight and make sure all the stitches appear even and equally spaced. And then push the needle through the last hole as I'm doing. Bring it up between the leather and out between the lacing. Cut off the excess lace. There you have it. It's all completed. And the one thing though that I did notice is that the stitching and everything, this is supposed to be the front side, and this is what it should look like on the back side. However, when I ended up starting it, I didn't really want to redo everything, but when I'm looking at it, it kind of makes sense that this would be on the back side anyways, just because it's a bit smooth, and this is going to be the thing that's going to be roughing up against your pants or your belt or what have you. And this side's going to be more open, and also I think it's real neat because it adds a border of its own. And so there you go, it's all complete. And I might do a little touch up here and there with the enamel, but then again, that's going to get scuffed up and scratched anyway, so I might just leave that. But I'm pretty satisfied. Especially since the very first time that I was doing this the other night, relearning this was a pain in the butt. So, but I feel good about this. My uncle's going to get a kick out of it. What I am going to do is get some black dye, and I'm going to take my airbrush and pretty much just go around and fix all the edges and stuff, because that's just what happens with old leather. You get little cracks here and there. And I didn't dye any of the back plate. Like I said, this was only the only thing I added was neat's foot oil, and it just turned a jet black. And you can see this with the same sort of color as it is with the lacing, because the lacing's black. And so I didn't know that he didn't put any Resolene or top coat on the back plate at all to add a finish. This is like the original veg tan leather from the 1970s when he was 18 years old and put it together. And so none of this was actually had any Resolene on it. And after I put the dye on it, I'm going to let it sit for about an hour, and then I'm going to go ahead and put a Resolene over everything. That way this thing will see another good 40 some odd years. So I hope you guys like this and enjoyed. At the end right here, I'm going to be putting a picture of what it finally looks like, sort of get like some glory shots and stuff, just a little bit more better than what I'm doing right now. But I hope you guys like this and enjoyed. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the like button, because I got some more stuff on the way. I got some more projects I got coming in the pipeline, and I'm actually working on right now finishing up the editing. So, but you guys have a good one,